Joy here with Real Progressives. Tonight I am joined by a Berniecrat from California. He's running for Congress. His name is Duncan. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're glad to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So you are actually, you work in social work for Child Protective Services. So what made you get into politics?
You know, Joy, it really seemed to me that after watching especially last year's presidential election, that the needs of families in our nation were not really being addressed, certainly not by the Republicans. I felt that there was a need for that, to have a candidate who would actually stand up, not necessarily for people on the right or people on the left, but rather for the people in this country who are struggling. A lot of poor and middle class people, families that are struggling. I think that was the power of Bernie Sanders' campaign. I think that's why he's the most popular politician in America today, because it's not about right or left. It's about how our middle class and poor are doing. And that's what I'm about.
Awesome. I can definitely see the transition. Excuse me. That was
Bless you.
Congrats. You're my first guest. I did that in front of. So I actually, when I was reading your bio, I saw that as a social worker, you have had some really tough cases. And because of that, you're obviously an empath, which means that you basically are an ideal politician in that sense, because you've been a lot of the places we have. So how does that, have you talked to the people you work with about running for Congress, and what is their perception?
Joy, some of them are aware, and thankfully they would love to see me win, because they feel, a lot of folks that I work with feel a real disconnect with the people in power today, whether at the federal level, even at the local level. They simply feel like these people who are supposedly working for them are not. That, again, is something that is, I think that's the reason so many people choose not to vote today. It's like, why? These people aren't going to do anything for me. They don't have my best interests at heart. Joy, the thing about me that differentiates me from other quote-unquote politicians is that I have worked with the people, the poor, virtually all of my career. I spent 10 years working with the homeless during the 1990s. Since that time, I've worked with kids who've been abused, and there's like a 95% correlation between poverty and child abuse. The people that I work with are the people that I want to help. I've been helping them for going on 30 years now, but I think it's time to take it to a new level. We need to have government representatives who care about the people that they represent, not just the rich, because that's what we have now. That's with the way campaign financing is, which is another topic that we can talk about, because I get very passionate about it. Our representatives are bought and sold. They are bought and sold. They do not represent the people that elected them. That will change when I'm elected.
Awesome. So did you then agree to not take any money from super PACs and things like that?
Correct. My campaign is people powered. The average donation is like $25 in amount. I'll be honest with you. The other two folks I'm running against have raised more money than I have, even though I've got like 3 times as many people donating, simply because a lot of the people that I represent, they can't afford to give $2,700. They can't afford to give $1,000. What I have a lot of is people giving me $10 a month. I have a lot of that. I have a lot of people who live on fixed incomes, who are working for minimum wage. That's what they can afford, but they want someone who will represent them.
And each one of those people is a vote. So it's more advantageous for you. Even if you don't have as much money, you have more people supporting you. So that's definitely, advantageous for you.
Yeah.
I know you're also, I've seen pictures of you with signs out on the street and stuff. So it appears like you are an activist as well. When did you start your activism, and what was it that made you start?
I've kind of been an activist for about 20 years, helping local candidates with their campaigns and things like that. I have become more so over the past year and a half. Most recently, I did a press conference out in front of our representative in Congress here in District 1 is a gentleman by the name of Doug LaMalfa. He is a Tea Party Republican. He and the other Republicans in Congress decided on September 30th of this year that they would not give funding for the Children's Health Insurance Program. That really struck a chord with me. On October 30th, 1 month after they opted not to fund that program, which provides health care for kids from lower income up to middle income families. In our district alone, 40,000 children are impacted by this. 9 million nationwide. So we had a press conference. The next day, Doug LaMalfa was on the floor of the House stating his support for CHIP, stating that it was the Democrats' fault. My feeling, Joy, is I've already got Doug LaMalfa on the run. I had a press conference at his office. The next day, he's out on the floor of the House having to state his support for a program that provides health insurance for children. Why? I do not know what is wrong in our country when we cannot have representatives who will vote for something that provides health care for children, and they're currently not paying any political price. I want to make him pay a political price for this. This is not right. Kids deserve health care. I think that's kind of obvious.
Yeah, absolutely. I work in healthcare, and I worked for CHIP for 3 years. So and also medical assistants. I worked with them as well. So, I saw the damage it does when, people would come to me with like thousands of dollars worth of bills and say, I need health insurance, especially when they're kids. It's heartbreaking. Why is that even a question? Why? I mean, it's inhumane. I think the number one thing that I notice all the time with our country is that so many people don't care about things until they affect them directly. And we have to get away from that because, God's forbid that guy, someone in his family, needed insurance and couldn't get it. Oh, all of a sudden he'd be like, we need to pass this. So, yes. I mean, we have to, you being an empath to me is like, that's what automatically sold me to begin with, because that's what we need.
Yeah.
I also know that you're a huge LGBTQ ally, and you did an event recently. Can you explain a little about that?
Well, Joy, for me, I recently spoke at the LGBTQ caucus for the California State Democratic Party. Myself and some other good people were there, Delane Easton and others who Delane, I really like her. She's running for governor of the state of California. For me, again, a lot of this comes from my experience of working as a social worker. I remember 20 years ago what it was like working with teens who were coming out, and how that was such a huge thing at that time. Families were being blown up over this issue. Now things have gotten better. Things are a little better. A lot of the issues I see today involving LGBTQ youth, family, the parents are more supportive. Certainly their peers are more supportive. But many of those same issues still exist. It's just a fact that among transgender people, that the rate of suicide and attempted suicide is almost 50%. It's simply a fact that still to this day, among LGBTQ youth, they are 3 times more likely to try to commit suicide. So the problems still exist. We have to somehow get by these. Things are better. I am not going to deny that. But yes, I am a huge friend of this community, and recently was very proud to be at Pride Days and set up a booth there.
That is so awesome. Now, it looks like, let me see what her name is, Josephine, I believe. It won't let me pull it back up. So just, can you state what party you're running and why you chose the party you're running? Because I think someone's kind of confused.
Okay. What party I'm running in?
Yes.
I'm a Democrat. I've been a Democrat forever. My grandparents were Democrats, and I'm a Democrat. It's something kind of handed down to me. However, as I say when I'm out speaking to people, folks say that I'm a progressive, and I'll accept that. I believe I am a progressive in today's terms. But I also feel that I am from the old school of the Democratic Party. I'm an FDR Democrat. I believe that from the 1930s, when this country was in real trouble, we were in real trouble. The Democratic Party, as it existed at that time, lifted us out of those troubles, took us through a world war, and in fact controlled this government for essentially 3 decades, a time when the United States middle class was king throughout the world. That is what led our country to be so great. Our middle class was king. Everybody who had a job could afford a home. Everybody who wanted to could go to college for next to nothing. It's not the case anymore. We need to get... No. I am a progressive, but in a lot of ways, we need to go back to some of those old policies that worked so well. They worked so well. You know, Joy, I was very fortunate that my parents and my grandparents and that entire generation, they believed that it was important to have college that was affordable. I had the best opportunity. I got to go. All I had to do was get decent grades. I went to UC Berkeley, got my degree there, and paid $700 a semester. At the same time, I had a guy I knew who was going to Harvard, and it was roughly $25,000 a semester. Private school, right? But I don't even know what Harvard is anymore. It must be outlandish, but Berkeley is 10 times what it used to be. That's, you know, and there's a local school here, Chico State, who we've heard of as the party school and all that, but it's actually a good school. Back in those days, it was $100 a semester. Now it's $3,500. The middle class is being priced out of college. We have, you know, currently over $1 trillion in student loans out there. The banks are making millions of dollars in interest every year. Last year in 2016, the federal government raked in over $1 billion in interest from the citizens of the United States. There are 44 million people with student loans right now, most of them middle class, most of them between the ages of 25 and 40. They come up to me at my campaign events and they talk to me about how they can't afford a home. They can't afford a new car. One young woman said she wanted to have a family, but she couldn't afford it. We need to do something about student loans. We had a housing crisis in 2008. Student loans are the new housing crisis. After I'm elected, I'm going to propose legislation that we get rid of student loans, that the federal government will pay off up to 90% of each and every individual student loan. If you owe $10,000, you'll owe us $1,000. We'll call it even and let people pay that $1,000, get out from under that student loan and buy a home, buy a car, get what they need to get on with their lives. More than any tax break the Republicans are proposing right now, that would be a massive economic stimulus for this country.
It would, absolutely. I worked in student loans for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for several years, and I used to talk to those kids who would call crying. I went to med school for 2 years. I can't even finish because I already owe $100,000. And, you know, you're just like, your heart breaks for them because they can't find a job that is even close to what they would need to make. So yeah, it's incredible. I'm very lucky that I got scholarships and stuff, because I wouldn't have been able to go otherwise. The reason why I asked you about party is because someone in the comments was saying, never vote Berniecrat, only vote Democrat. So I wanted to kind of explain that Berniecrat isn't not a Democrat. A Berniecrat is just something they call people who supported Bernie and are now running. I just wanted to make that clear, because I don't think that Josephine was aware of what that actually meant. So I know you said you've been a Democrat, and so have your parents and grandparents. But as far as 2016, when we saw the cheating, everything like that, was there ever a time when you considered at least running independent, or were you always from the get-go, I am going to be Democrat, period?
Joy, what happened in 2016? I've addressed this with a lot of my friends. I supported Bernie in 2016. I voted for him in the primary here in California. I felt he was the best candidate for president. I thought that he would have won in a general election going away. And it really disheartens me to see that there is still a lot of bitterness about that election. I have urged a lot of my cohorts, my colleagues in the Democratic Party, that we need to make it right. We need to be more transparent. What happened was not right. We need to be more open and transparent. If people are going to trust the Democratic Party, if people are going to come to the Democratic Party and see it what it has traditionally been, which is a champion of the poor and the middle class, they need to feel like when they vote that their vote actually means something. There's been a few folks in the Democratic Party who haven't been happy with those statements, but I felt like I needed to say that. I feel like it's the truth. We need to reconcile. I see it here. We need to reconcile folks who say they're Berniecrats and Democrats. We oftentimes believe in 99% of the same things, and we need to come together, because what we have in the White House now, what we have in the Congress now, is tearing this country up.
It is, absolutely. It's amazing, because when we all first started campaigning for Bernard, there were millions of us who became one. I mean, it was like I've never felt like a hippie until I met like my brothers and sisters in Bernie. Like we just all came together like a family. It was crazy. And now there is such an incredible divide between not just Democrats and Republicans, but progressives as a whole. I mean, it gets so ugly sometimes. And it does worry me and others. Is it able to be repaired? I don't know. I'm definitely willing to try, but I get discouraged because there's a lot of hatred, especially online, with vote shaming, and I wrote Bernie in. People are not fans of that. I mean, some are, but some definitely are not. So the whole vote shaming thing, the whole you better do this or else, and like you said, we do all want the same things in the end. So what do you think is your biggest piece of advice when people go there and there's just so much infighting?
I tell you, Joy, my biggest piece of advice is as folks who consider themselves Berniecrats and folks who consider themselves Democrats, we need to sit down and talk. I sit down and I try to talk with folks who are on both sides. And I think that when we just sit down and talk to one another, we find out that we have a lot of things in common. But a lot of this, it's like earlier this year, I went to the Democratic State Convention here in California. And what you're talking about, I saw it firsthand. What's his name? Tom Perez was up there talking. He got shouted down. People were not wanting to hear it because here in California, we're pretty progressive. And, he was up there and he was talking about Trump this and Trump that. But I think a lot of us here in California, progressives, were tired of just bad-mouthing Trump. We want to hear about real policies. We want to hear what's the Democratic Party going to do?
Right.
I'm no spring chicken, but I'm the future. These beliefs and policies I have, this is the future of the Democratic Party. California is one of the most liberal state parties. It is the future of the Democratic Party in the United States. And if the Democratic Party does not hop on board, they got trouble. And as
2020, essentially.
Well, they've got trouble, but as I tell people, all this political infighting, it's bad. It's nasty. But the real losers are our poor and middle class. They need people of good faith like you and I and the millions of people out there now who believe in equality in this country, who believe in what America can be. They are waiting for us. In this district of mine, it's red. But as I tell people, you know what? There aren't a lot of Republicans here, but there are a lot of disaffected Democrats. They've been waiting forever for the Democrats to stand up and do the right thing. When the Democrats do, when they stand up and they fight for progressive values, when they fight for middle-class families and poor families, those voters respond. They respond. And when we start doing that, we will win this district. Bernie Sanders in this district, a red district, last year won 70% of the vote, 70-30 over Clinton. You might think, she's more of a centrist. How could that be? That's because there are all those people who The independents, they went probably 80% for Bernie Sanders. They are the people that I'm going to pick up, and I will win this district 53-47.
Awesome. So you've done those calculations based on the number of people registered and what party they're under? Because I know California is a closed primary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they have what's called a jungle primary out here, where only 2 people can go to the election in November. In this district, we have 30% are registered as Democrat, 40% as Republican. Well, that leaves 30% with no party preference. Those people, the NPPs, no party preference, they went overwhelmingly for Bernie Sanders. Those people in that area, they are tired of Democrats, and they're not that happy with Republicans either. They're waiting for somebody with a strong message who will stand up and say, I am for you. I am going to make government work for you, and we're going to take our government back.
Yeah, the no party preference, those are the paper ballots that there were all over 3 million of them found in boxes after the election because the people were given those unfairly. They were cheated. They stole their votes. Over 3 million people had their votes stolen with those papers. So I can't help but associate that. But what do you think that we could do in the future to help fair elections?
Well, what I'm hearing from a lot of folks is there is a great deal of concern about the voting machines, especially with the Russian hacking that has occurred. There's just concern about hacking in general when you vote and a machine is involved. So I'm kind of urging people to vote with a paper ballot. You have proof that you voted. It has to be counted by a human being. And I just, it's kind of old school, but I feel a little more comfortable with that.
Right. I mean, I don't believe in Russian hacking because there's been no evidence, but I do believe that, like, I know Hillary's, the guy who owns 8 states voting machines, all of them in 8 states, donated millions of dollars to her campaign, which I think is like, the most simplest way of saying a conflict of interest. So things like that, I agree. Paper ballots, also double counting, also exit polls. They stopped doing the exit polls the last 8 primaries because there were so many discrepancies. They stopped things like that. So I agree. And I think California is progressive enough that hopefully they could start that. And then hopefully the rest would follow. As far as, what's that? Oh, are you going to say something?
No, I'm good.
Oh, okay. As far as the person who's in Congress right now in your area, what is something that you would do completely different than what they're doing? What would you be focused on?
Okay, there are a lot of things, Joy, but one thing that I would do completely different, Mr. LaMalfa denies climate change. He doesn't believe that it's real, even though his district is severely impacted by climate change. We have a lot of 2 or 3 national forests up here. We've had horrible fires. I am not a climate change denier. I tend to believe science. I'm good with science. One of the things that I would do is, rather than fight against science, I believe that we need to make a real pivot towards renewable energy. We need to do something about the climate change and global warming like yesterday. Okay, I have a 25-year-old daughter, and I have grandchildren. I want them to be able to have an opportunity at the end of this century to live on this planet. That if we do not do something immediately about climate change, even if every nation in this planet agreed to the Paris Climate Accords, by the end of the century, the global temperature would go up 2 degrees. Joy, what that means. Our equator on this planet would be uninhabitable. Countries currently like Iraq and Iran, the average temperature every day would be 140 degrees. When Mr. Sanders talked about climate change being one of the huge national security issues, he's right. He's right. If we do not address this, there will be interminable wars fighting over less and less natural resources like food, like water. As we have these droughts, like we have here in California, we will have less and less water. We have to address this now. I would put forth a bill that would allot $750 billion to have us on completely renewable energy in the United States of America by 2030. The Obama administration, excuse me, their goal was 2050. We can't wait that long. We have to do it faster than that. We have to go above and beyond the Paris Climate Accords if we want to have hope for our children and grandchildren. And the good thing about a bill like this is that you can have your cake and eat it too. We can make our planet a better place. We can also help our economy. I was reading about, you're from Pennsylvania, and I was reading a statement, an article the other day by the mayor of Pittsburgh. He is very much into renewable energy simply because it's renewable, because it's good for the planet, but also for the economics. What's called the Rust Belt back there in Michigan and Pennsylvania, it's been decimated by the 2008 economic meltdown. Renewable energy can bring back economies that have been flattened, like ours here in Northern California. Our unemployment rate is much higher than the rest of the country. In the area where you live, we can build factories where they can build parts for wind turbines, for solar panels, etc. This is where our future lies, both economically and ecologically. It's the way we need to go. Our current congressman won't even admit there's a problem.
Does he have you been able to research, does he have like donations and stocks from like oil companies or is there that conflict of interest? I figured.
Yeah, we don't have, in Northern California, we have no oil derricks or anything like that. But he still takes a few thousand every year from Standard Oil. So maybe it has something to do with it, maybe not. I think it does. It's same old, same old.
Yeah, exactly. So I see that I believe Matthew just stated the vote is in June. Is that correct?
We have a primary in June. I want to say June 5th. And
how many other people are you running against?
there's two other Democrats, and of course the incumbent.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
So now, as far as economics, there's a lot of, well, several questions in here. If you're familiar with MMT, do you know what that is?
Modern monetary theory.
Yes, exactly. So that's something a lot of the streamers talk about on here. So people wanted to know, like, what your thoughts are on that, or if you're willing to learn more, or, you know, anything like that.
Yeah, I am not an expert on MMT. What I do know, it is a vertical monetary system, wherein because we have fiat currency, that it comes from the government, not sovereign, and therefore any of the talk that we have about, national debt and things like that is really kind of bogus. I think there's some real validity to MMT. It seems like that whenever we need monies for social programs, we have to think about, the national debt. But when we have to raise monies, massive amounts of money for the defense budget, it's like, what national debt? When we have to cut taxes to billionaires, we don't seem to have any problems with national debt. So, in looking over MMT, a lot of it makes sense to me. I think that first and foremost, if our citizens have real basic needs for medical care and other things, we need to find a way to make it happen. We may have to, quote unquote, go into debt. I'm okay with that because our country has had to do that in the past. But if you don't provide for your citizens, what kind of country are you? We're supposed to be the richest country on earth. And yet we have people here in our country, still some who don't have health care, who I see kids every day at my job, who, if they're lucky, they'll get pizza at night. We're the richest country on earth. We can do better. We can do better than this.
Absolutely, 100%. You certainly knew more than I did when I first started here, because I was like, what? What is an MMT? What does that stand for? I pretty much knew nothing. Let's see. So when is the deadline for people to switch over and register Democrat so they can vote for you in June?
That's a good question. I think it's March.
Okay.
March of
okay, good.
2000.
I wanted to make sure because, New York, you have to do it like 8 months in advance, which is how burners got screwed in New York, because they have to register by October for June, and they don't publicize it. So I always like to ask, just so, so they have a few months. So that's good.
Yeah. I want to say it's 90 days. Before.
So is that something also that you would consider on your platform, open primaries?
Open primary, as in, I'm not exactly sure what you mean, Joy.
Pennsylvania is a closed state. California is a closed state. You have to be registered for who you're going to vote for. I'm an independent. I would not be able to vote for you. So open it up so that it, just like the general, it doesn't matter what party preference you are. You can vote for the person, not the party.
I would be in favor of that. I see no problem with that. If somebody is, I honestly, I don't see in the primaries why parties should play any role in that.
Absolutely. Well, Like Debbie Wasserman Schultz, she admitted that things like that are barriers to keep like grassroots candidates out. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. Usually I don't associate her with truth, but I think there is. I think there is some validity to that. They don't want people being able to vote for the person. They want loyalists, vote blue no matter who. Right. So, and some states are open primaries, so it also begs the question, why can't they all be? There's not uniformity for some reason. What is something that you look for in 2018 candidates? What are your specific qualifications for someone to earn your vote?
For me, Joy, one of the main things, I think the defining issue of this election, and this has been coming on for a while, I cannot support a candidate who's not in favor of Medicare for all. Back in the 1930s, we started this crazy program called Social Security. And there was an uproar. There was an uproar from folks who were more conservative. How are we going to do it? It's going to break the country financially. If you study your history, you find out that those same excuses are being used today in regards to Medicare for all. The fact is, Medicare for all is not only, well, fiscally, it makes more sense, okay? Currently in the United States, we spend $3 trillion. Americans spend $3 trillion on medical care. Medicare for all would cost about $2 trillion. Now, again, I'm no mathematician, but it seems to me that 3 is bigger than 2, and therefore we should go with Medicare for all. We will save in this country $1 trillion every year for every man, woman, and child to get medical care that they need. If any candidate that does not support Medicare for all, I cannot support. And I hate to be rigid like that, but for me, it is the last piece of the puzzle here in our country. If we cannot support something so basic as care that will allow people to live, I've got nothing more to say. We need Medicare for all. That's all I've got to say. We need Medicare for all.
And I think also, Big Pharma alone, it would save people so much. I know it would save me a ridiculous amount of money. You can't even have generics for 7 years. And working in healthcare, we just got an introduction to a new drug, and I can't think of what it's called. It's Kymriah, I think it's called, and it's for cancer. It is $500,000. Okay, granted, it's for cancer. I get it. It's important, but and you're going to do what you can, even if it's bankruptcy, to get it. But the thing is, why should you have to? It's like, and you don't have a choice. It's a hostage situation. You either pay this, or you're one of the elderly people who takes a bus to Canada and cuts their pills in thirds and then winds up going to the hospital with more bills because they can't take their medication regularly. And it's like this cycle. So even Big Pharma alone, I think it would make tremendous change. So I agree. Yeah, if someone doesn't support Medicare for all, I think that's like how people say a litmus test. I think that's something that is not really able to be compromised. And you're also in California, where you guys had the HR 676. So how was your reaction when you found out that an actual Democrat was the one who just screwed the people over?
Well, we had in California, we actually tried to pass single payer, just California, SB 562, and it went from the Senate, originally went from the state Senate to the state assembly. We, of course, have a veto-proof majority in both houses here in the state. But when it went back into the state Senate, it did not make it through there. There were some concerns about the funding. Some of them were actually decent concerns, but I do believe, I am very hopeful that at a state level, we are going to have single payer by next year. I don't see it happening at the federal level. I would ideally like to see Medicare for All, H.R. 676. It's currently in the House. Of course, Senator Sanders has presented his own bill in the Senate. My first act after I am elected is I am going to go onto the House floor and sign on as a co-sponsor of H.R. 676. We need to have Medicare for All everywhere I go and speak at. All I have to do is say the words Medicare for All, and people break out in applause. This is a no-brainer. And in fact, Joy, right now, while 62% of the country is in favor of a single payer program, Medicare for All, or whatever you want to call it, actually among Republicans, 40% of Republicans are in favor of Medicare for All. If the Democratic Party, all Democrats, do not support Medicare for All, they're making a huge mistake. And I don't care if they're Democrats or not. If they do not support Medicare for All, I will not vote for them.
Absolutely. And, Bernard was even saying, he said, I just need one state. That's all I need, just one. And then we can use it as an example and go forward. And I do think California would be that state because you guys already planted that seed. And I think also the difference is 2 years ago, Medicare for All was not something people talked about because they didn't know about it. But now we're organizing rallies and we're doing shows and they're talking about it in magazines and on the TV. And so it's more known, which means we, the people, are not shutting up. They have, the consequence of, do you want us or do you not want our vote? Or, you know what I mean? We have the leverage right now because we're going to the polls in not too long. So right. We have that leverage. What, if people take one thing from this interview, what is your message, your main message? What do you want to leave with people?
Well, of course, Joy, my campaign slogan is families first. I've had some people say who are single that, what about me? I want people to know after they're done listening to me on your show that I am just a small piece of a huge change that's going to occur next year. Some people are calling next year a wave election. It's not just a wave, Joy. It's going to be a tsunami, okay? There's going to be massive change next year. It's not just about Donald Trump. Donald Trump is there's a lot of words I can use for Donald Trump, and I can't really say them right now. But he's a very poor president. But it's not just him. The people in Congress right now, they don't care about us. They don't care about the people of this country. Next year, there is going to be the tsunami of 2018. I'm going to be part of that tsunami. I'm going to be riding my surfboard right into Washington, D.C. We are going, the progressives are going to take over Washington, D.C. next year. Not Democrats, not Berniecrats, but progressives, people with progressive ideas. Next year, the Congressional Progressive Caucus is going to grow probably by 3 times as large as it is now. There's going to be tens and dozens of people with the same beliefs as Ro Khanna. We are going to take both houses back next year. I want people to be hopeful. Right now, what with things happening in regards to issues like net neutrality and other things, it's easy to be down. Next year at this time, life's going to be a lot different in the United States. And by January of 2019, things are going to be extremely different and very progressive.
I agree. I really do. We had to hit that rock bottom. I mean, unfortunately, something I say is, Trump tried to tear us apart, and in some ways he has, but he's also inadvertently brought us together and made us stronger and made us activists and made us fight more for what we believe in. So yeah, I agree. And I think we got a taste of that 2 weeks ago with all those progressives elected in, states that were not expected to have progressives elected. So that was pretty huge. That was a good indication of things to come, for sure. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it, Dennis. And do you want to give your info, like your website, and also how to donate or how to contact if people want to canvas, anything like that?
Yeah, Joy, my website is dennis2018.com. Like I said, I'm kind of a small donations guy. I like to see a lot of donations of $20.18. To me, that shows that folks are mindful of the election and that they are given to me not because not because they're an oil company, but because they're a real person. I want to have a lot of real people giving to my campaign, because I'm going to be affecting a lot of change comes 2019.
Awesome. That's so great. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us. To everyone watching, thank you as always. So have a good holiday tomorrow. And while we are with our families, let's please think of the fact that last year at this time, we had Native American and as well as allies fighting against no DAPL, and just remember that it's not over. They still need our support, and just acknowledge them today and tomorrow, because it's important that we not lose sight as something in the past. So again, thank you guys for watching. I'm doing another Dem Enter, Dem Exit debate next Friday at 10 p.m. Eastern. So again, thank you so much, Dennis. You take care, and I wish you the best of luck on your campaign.
Thank you, Joy. I want to thank everybody for watching, and I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Okay, and my birthday's on Sunday, so wish me a happy birthday.
Right. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Live it up.
Oh. Thanks, Joy.
Sure.
Take care.